They thought she was just a clerk. They were wrong. The conference room on the 51st floor of Langford & Cole Tower was filled with dark suits, silk ties, and champagne confidence. A skyline view glittered behind them, Chicago, in all its ruthless beauty. Around the mahogany tables sat the elite, department heads, board members, and the CEO himself, Elliot Langford. Everyone was here for the final vote on a billion-dollar supplier contract that promised to reshape mid-market logistics forever. That's when it happened. From the far wall, near the catering trays, a woman in a plain grey cardigan stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said softly, almost apologetically, "but this clause is a trap." Every head turned. Conversation stopped. A tense silence settled over the room like falling ash. She wasn't on the attendee list. She wasn't wearing a name tag. Her flats were worn, her ID badge clipped to her belt like an afterthought. Someone near the projector scoffed. "Who the hell is that?" "Probably catering," another mumbled. Elliot Langford's eyes narrowed. "Security." But before the guard at the back could move, the woman stepped closer to the projection screen. Her hand lifted, trembling slightly, as she pointed to the glowing slide. Clause 47B, Liability Redistribution. "If you approve this contract," she said, steady now, "Langford & Cole becomes legally liable for supplier default 7 in cases of force majeure. Tornado, labor strike, global shortage. You'll absorb the risk entirely." There was a pausier flicker of discomfort, followed by laughter. "Oh, that's rich," said Thomas Marin, head of acquisitions. "A data entry temp thinks she can interpret legalese. That's adorable." "Did she just say force majeure, like she Googled it this morning?" added Vanessa Cole, the COO, her diamond earrings glittering as she rolled her eyes. But the woman didn't flinch. "I've read every line of this contract," she continued, calm and controlled. "There are 3 more clauses that directly violate both state and federal contract law. If you sign this, you won't just lose money, you could lose everything." That's when Elliot Langford stood up, slow and theatrical. "Miss, whoever you are, you've just interrupted a private board meeting to give your opinion on complex legal negotiations while wearing a sweater from Goodwill." A few people chuckled. One man actually clapped. "This," Langford continued, "is why we vet resumes more carefully, because apparently we've let in someone who thinks watching Suits qualifies her to give legal advice." Then he added, with a smile so cold it could crack glass, "You're fired, effective immediately. Security?" The guards began to move, but the woman still standing at the screen did something strange. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply bent down, calmly picked up her satchel, and reached inside. That's when Thomas Marin, half laughing, called out, "She's pulling out a flashcard, maybe it's her fake law degree." But what she pulled out wasn't a flashcard. It was a notebook, small, leather-bound, well-worn. It flipped open as she adjusted her grip. A folded photo slipped out and slid across the polished floor. She froze. 1 beat, 2, 3. Her fingers moved like they were remembering something. She knelt slowly, picked up the photo, and stared at it for a moment too long. The laughter faded. She stood up straighter than before, eyes now locked on Elliot Langford's with quiet, steel stillness. He took a step back, suddenly unsure. And that's when someone in the back of the room said half under their breath, "Wait, is that?" But the words never finished. Because in that moment, there was a shift. She wasn't a ghost anymore, not some nobody in the corner. There was something ancient in her posture, something refined in the way she moved her fingers over the edge of the contract. She wasn't pretending to know the law. She was the law. And the room hadn't even begun to understand who they were dealing with. She didn't need to raise her voice. The silence did it for her. The guards froze in place not from her words, but from the stillness in the room. There's a kind of quiet that comes just before something irreversible. The kind that hums behind your ears and makes you question everything you thought was true. The woman took one deliberate step forward and, without asking, picked up the laser pointer from the head of the table. Her fingers moved with eerie confidence like someone who had stood here before, too many times to count. "Clause 47B, she repeated, her voice sharp but steady. "Any breach regardless of cause transfers liability from the supplier to Langford & Cole. That means you eat the losses, all of them." Someone shifted uncomfortably in their seat. She clicked to the next slide. Clause 12A, exclusivity rights. Any product, invention, or system created by the supplier, during or after the contract, regardless of context, becomes your intellectual property, even if it's unrelated. Even if it's 20 years later, that's not standard, that's theft. Gasps echoed from three corners of the room. Clause 33C, she continued, now with a note of fire beneath the surface, removes access to neutral courts. All disputes must be tried in a jurisdiction chosen by your company, with all legal fees paid by the supplier, even if you lose. That's not just predatory, it's unlawful. No one laughed this time. Vanessa Cole leaned forward, fingers interlocked, visibly rattled. And where exactly did you learn to read contracts like that? The woman didn't answer. She simply turned back to the projector and flipped to the final page. These terms violate the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Uniform Commercial Code, and at least 11 state-level business regulations. I can cite them all. Thomas Marin tried to recover, voice cracking as he spoke. Look, these are standard protections. Every major firm uses language like this. You're blowing it out of proportion. The woman turned, slowly. Her eyes met his. You ever read House Bill 2847? She asked. He blinked. What? It's the Corporate Accountability Act, she continued, her tone now surgical. Passed in 2018. Makes this kind of contract punishable by up to $100 million in civil fines and 10 years in federal prison. If you want, I can recite the section numbers from memory. No one said a word. In the back of the room, a young legal associate named Rachel fumbled with her phone, frantically typing. Her eyes darted between the projector and the woman. She pulled up an image, looked at it, then looked again. She stood up. That's not just anyone, Rachel whispered. That's not some temp. All eyes turned toward her. That's Elena Blake. Sheesh. It's the Elena Blake, the one who dismantled Sycorax Energy, the youngest senior partner in Boston legal history. She wrote House Bill 2847. The air snapped like electricity. Elliot Langford's smug expression vanished. That's impossible. Elena Blake vanished years ago. She was disbarred. No, Rachel said, voice shaking. She disappeared, but she was never disbarred. Her bar license is still active. I checked. The woman Eleanor reached into her satchel again and held up a small laminated card. The room zoomed in on it like gravity itself had shifted. Massachusetts Bar Association. Elena Marie Blake. Attorney at law license number 4479-13. Active. Valid. Untouched. She stepped away from the table. I've been here for 6 months. Watching. Waiting. Gathering every document. Every meeting minute, every whispered joke about burying the little guys. She looked around at the people who had laughed just minutes ago. You didn't see me because you weren't looking. You thought I was invisible because I wasn't in heels or holding a title. But you gave me everything I needed just by underestimating me. Elliot slammed his palm on the table. This is a setup. No, Elena replied, placing a small audio recorder on the table. This is evidence. The red light blinked. Every meeting. Every casual admission, every arrogant aside. Her voice dropped, almost like a prayer. You've built a kingdom on broken backs. Now you're going to answer for it. The shock in the room was total. Some people looked down. Others shifted, suddenly realizing their names were on those contract drafts. The mood had turned. Elena didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She simply turned to Rachel, the associate who had recognized her. Call the number at the top of my bar card. They're expecting you. Rachel looked down and her eyes widened. District Attorney's Office, Federal Division. Name on the line, Benjamin Cross. Elliot Langford's mouth moved, but no sound came out. For the first time in his 20 years as CEO, he looked small, not because of what was said, but who had said it. Elena Blake. The ghost of Boston. The woman who once shredded billion-dollar oil giants in courtrooms without flinching. And she was standing in his boardroom, holding a federal bar card like it was a sword. A distant wail echoed from beyond the glass tower. Sirens. Growing louder. Rochelle's legal associate was still frozen, staring at the DA's number blinking on the caller ID. Her thumb hovered. Elliot lunged toward her. But it was too late. She pressed, call. It rang once. Twice. Benjamin Cross, Federal District Attorney. Rachel's voice cracked. Sir, it's Rachel Myers, Langford and Cole. I think you've been waiting for this. From the front of the room, Elena took the phone from Rachel and put it on speaker. Ben, it's Elena. A pause. Then, Elena, the DA said, his voice turning razor sharp. We've been standing by. How many witnesses? Roughly 60 in the room. Another 400 on the live internal stream. Every phone recording. Every statement captured. Perfect. Our units are in position. 10 minutes max. Keep them contained. The line went dead. For a second, no one moved. Then the sound of elevator doors dinging shattered the silence. Multiple footsteps. Heavy, purposeful. Black suits. Gold badges. FBI. They swept in like a storm. Federal agents. No one leaves this room. Put down your devices. Hands visible. Panic. Scrambling. Elliot shouted, "This is illegal! I want my lawyer!" Thomas Marin tried deleting emails. An agent snatched his phone mid-delete. One of the agents turned to Elena. "You're the informant?" She nodded. "Everything's in the files I sent. Audio, video, financials, testimony. And this," she handed him a hard drive, "contains internal emails referencing the predatory nature of the contract, including a group thread labeled, 'Let the small guys bleed.'" The agent's brow darkened. Meanwhile, Vanessa Cole stood frozen, still clutching her designer pen. "We didn't know," she whispered. But Elena turned to her, gaze cold. "Number? You didn't care. There's a difference." Across the table, one executive was quietly sobbing. Another pulled out rosary beads. Elena walked slowly to the center of the room. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't angry. She was exact. 3 months ago, she began, I was approached by a coalition of 52 small businesses contractors, family-run logistics firms, minority-owned startups. They were desperate. They didn't have lawyers, they didn't have leverage, but they had one thing left. She held up a folded photo, her and another woman, smiling, in front of a law office. "My sister, Jenna. She died trying to expose a contract like this. She recorded executives laughing about destroying people's livelihoods just like this one, and she paid for it with her life." The room was dead silent now. "I vanished after that, changed my name, changed my life, and for years I stayed hidden, thinking maybe the system just wins, that there's no place for people who fight back." She paused, her voice tightened. "But I was wrong." She looked directly at Elliot, who now sat with an agent behind him, arms folded. "You built an empire on fear, on fine print, on silence, but you forgot the one clause, no contract can erase conscience." The young associate Rachel took a step closer to Elena. "You could have exposed them from the outside. Why come here? Why go through this?" Elena turned. "Because you can't dismantle the machine from the sidewalk. You have to crawl into it, become invisible, and wait." At the back of the room, one of the agents raised a hand. "Langford, Marin, Cole, Wright, you're all under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, corporate racketeering, bribery of public officials, and obstruction of federal investigation." They were handcuffed right there in front of their empire. The live stream? Still running. The entire company was watching. Elena glanced toward the mounted camera. She didn't gloat. She didn't posture. She simply said, "To everyone watching, you have a choice, every day, to stand by and survivor, stand up and change something." Then she turned away from the camera, her back to the building she once served as a ghost. And this time no one dared stop her. The building felt smaller on the way out. Elena didn't look back as the glass doors of Langford & Cole closed behind her. Behind those walls, chaos was still unraveling, agents escorting executives out in cuffs, stunned assistants trying to process a reality they had never imagined. But outside, it was quiet. The Chicago sky was low and grey, with a breeze that hinted at early autumn, the kind of day that made people pull their jackets a little tighter, walk a little faster. But Elena Blake didn't rush. She walked like someone who had already outrun the worst. A black town car pulled up to the curb. The driver rolled down the window, an older man with silver at his temples and eyes that held both worry and gratitude. "Elena Blake?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm Michael Ruiz, Ruiz, Freight & Sons. You just saved my family's entire business." He opened the door for her, without ceremony. As she slid in, he glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Where to?" Elena pulled out the old leather wallet from her coat, the one with only 2 things inside, a bar card and a worn photograph. In the photo, 2 women laughed on a courthouse staircase. One held a bouquet of graduation flowers, the other held the future. "St. Mark's Cemetery," she said quietly. "Boston." Michael gave a small nod. "Long drive. You sure?" She looked out at the city skyline, then back down at the photo. "I'm sure." They drove in silence for a while. Traffic blurred past. Office workers returned to their routines. No one on the street had any idea that a titanic fraud had just been dismantled. No headlines yet. No ticker alerts, just the wind and the road. After a few minutes, Michael spoke again. "My daughter's in her second year at Northwestern Law," he said. "She almost dropped out last semester, said the system was too corrupt, too far gone." Elena turned to look at him. "I'm going to tell her what you did," he continued, "that someone walked straight into the dragon's mouth and made it choke on its own fire." A faint smile touched Elena's lips, the first real one in a long time. "Tell her it's not about slaying dragons," she said. "It's about refusing to become one." They reached the highway. The city faded behind them. She thought of Jenna, of how her sister would have smirked at the way Elliot Langford had sputtered like a man who thought he was untouchable until the law touched him. She imagined Jenna saying, "Told you justice still had a pulse." Elena blinked back the burn in her eyes. Not today, not yet. Several hours later, the car turned into a gravel path flanked by maples just beginning to turn amber. The cemetery was still. Rows of names stretched beneath a grey sky like silent sentinels. Michael stayed behind as Elena stepped out, wallet still in hand. She found the grave easily. Jennifer Blake. 1994, 2020. Courage is remembering who you are. Elena sat in the grass beside it. The wind was softer here. "I did it," she whispered. "I waited too long. I hid too deep, but I finally came back." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out Jenna's notebook, faded and torn, the one that had fallen in the boardroom like a lightning strike. She placed it gently on the headstone. "They know your name now, and they'll never forget it." A long silence passed. Then she stood. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. It was Rochelle, the young associate, the one who'd looked at her like she'd seen a lighthouse through fog. "Rachel Myers. I read all your old cases. I never believed someone like you could be real. Today, I stopped doubting. Thank you. We'll take it from here." Elena didn't reply. She didn't need to, because this wasn't about being remembered. It was about remembering what mattered. She returned to the car. Michael raised an eyebrow in the mirror. "Home now?" Elena exhaled, slowly. "Yes, but not the south side, not my apartment. I mean, somewhere new. Got any place in mind?" "I have 52 small business owners who just got a second chance," she said. "I think I'll help them build something from the ashes." Michael chuckled. "Not a lawyer anymore?" "No," Elena said. "Something simpler, something quieter." He started the engine. The sky above turned from grey to golden, just a sliver at first, but it was enough. As the car pulled away from the cemetery, the screen fades to black. She never screamed. She never begged. She simply stood up and let the truth speak louder than power ever could. Greatness doesn't wear name tags. It doesn't seek applause. It walks into the fire and doesn't burn. The next time you see someone quiet, invisible, dismissed, ask yourself, what would happen if they decided to stand up?